We don't always think of Paul as second-guessing himself. By the way, there are others along the way who have second-guessed themselves sometimes. You see, I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to the church. I have a responsibility in some other ways and other institutions. I can appreciate Paul's misgivings. I can appreciate his depression of spirit. I, too, have been self-accusatory, saying to myself, my, what different things could I have done? I know something of the same experience in my work. I've experienced conflict. I, too, have become anxious. You see, Paul was burdened by the carelessness in his church. Paul was worried about gratitude. Paul was worried or even betrayed by some. Paul sometimes searched for sympathy. Sometimes Paul didn't find sympathy. He understood the peril of the times in which they lived. Paul was concerned that sin was harbored in the church. He was compelled to do everything that he could to awaken those around him. He was compelled to awaken his congregants to the plight in which they lived. He was concerned that there was a lack of forgiveness in his church. You see, Paul was at the same time weighed down with fear. He was worried. He was worried that he was too severe. He was worried about what he had said. He was worried that somehow it had come across in the wrong way. And so it was with trembling anxiety that Paul waits for the response. He wondered about the reception of his message. He wondered if he had somehow given a balanced message. We, as did Paul, live in a time of crisis. Now, I know people that have already fled to the mountains. You're saying, what? Yeah, there's people who have already fled to the mountains. There are people who have said to me straight up that the Antichrist has shown up. I guarantee you he hasn't. But some people think he has. There are people who have gone way off the deep end to this side of the spectrum, and there are others who are going way off the deep end of the other side of the spectrum. Why? Because we live in the midst of crisis. And people are saying, wow, what must I do? What must be part of it? You see, Paul lived in a world of crisis. If there ever was a time when he was to understand the peril, it was then. If there ever is a time that we need to understand the peril, it's now. There are those who live today realizing that they have lost half of their accumulated wealth. They may never get it back. I don't know. There are those who live today who a couple of years ago had wished they had done something with their accumulated wealth, and now they don't have anything to do anything with. I don't know what to say, except to say that now is the time for us to recognize and appreciate that God has called us together to do a job. And our job is to awaken to the realities in which we live. It seems to me that there must be a singular purpose. And it seems to me that we ought to pick up everything and throw it in the tub for that singular purpose. And that singular purpose is the same thing that Jesus did when he came to this earth, and that was to seek and to save the lost. What else is there to do? You see, things aren't getting better. They don't look like they're getting better. They may even get worse, and I don't want to make everybody feel bad and go away with huge depression and all that kind of stuff. But you see, there's a God in heaven who loves us and cares for us, and there's a God in heaven who wants this world saved. Moses just sang the song. There's a God in heaven who wants this world saved, and He wants us to be actively involved in it, and He wants us to be doing everything that we possibly can, because we see the things transpiring in front of us today that we've been preaching about for 150 years. There's two of you believe that? Well, Jesus came to this world to seek and to save the lost. He left us the job that we are to share His kingdom of grace. Seems to me that if we want to meet the crisis, we must know thoroughly about His kingdom. Not only His kingdom of grace, but about His kingdom in heaven. A lot of people say, Jesus is coming. Well, I believe that. But I'm going to tell you something. There's a time happening in history between now and then that you're not going to know about until it's past. And that's called, in this community, we call it the close of probation. In the general Christian community, we call it the end of the kingdom of grace. And guess what? Jesus hasn't come yet.